Chantez le cantique autour de ce matin au Christ, étoile du matin. Au Christ, étoile du matin. Et chante. Au Christ, étoile du matin, que fait lever l'amour divin, heureux jetant fidèle, fils de David, roi éternel, et pour qui vient du haut du ciel, à moi tu te révèles, aimant, charmant, magnifique, héroïque, admirable, trop sublime, secourable.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
We get to travel the world again today. I want to say it's coincidence, but we know that it's the Lord's work that we get to talk with two sacred music educators in 1 week. How
Pretty cool.
awesome is that? I'm so excited. We get to talk with another one of our sacred music educators today who serves in French-speaking West and Central Africa. Yes, we're talking about Cantor Magnus and excited about that. Thanks so much to Concordia University, Wisconsin for your support of the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Philip Magnus, sacred music educator serving the Lord in French-speaking West and Central Africa. Thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour.
Bonjour.
Welcome back. You
thank
recently
you.
were able to travel and spend some time with our brothers and sisters in Christ in various parts of West and Central Africa. And what's unique about the people you serve, primarily French-speaking Africa, right?
Well, that's correct. My call is to teach the Lord's song, teach hymns, psalms, spiritual songs among our brothers and sisters in our Lutheran congregations, our church partners, and what we call our mission partners. That means churches we're not in fellowship with at this time, emerging church bodies or churches that we're developing relationships with, using mostly songs and hymns from the French language edition of the Lutheran Service Book, which was produced by the Lutheran Church-Canada, Liturgy et Cantique Luthérienne, which we call the Blue Hymnal or the Blue Collection in French, le Recueil Bleu, and because it's a beautiful French blue on the cover. So that is the primary resource that we use, though we do have some supplemental things that we use as well. And so for my previous interviews with KFUO, I've kind of told a little story how I got roped into this. But yeah, the Lord uses all your past experiences and puts them together and calls you into service. So I studied French when I was younger and like French language and culture. I kind of moved away from that as I went into a music career in the church. And then it just so happened that I kind of discovered why I had this interest in the French language because the Lord had plans for me. So now I teach our hymns in French. The majority of African countries in the central and western parts of the continent are French speaking. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, French. When the French lost most of their colonial empire in North America and the Caribbean, they went about establishing one in Africa, and they had quite the extensive region. And then after World War I, they took over most of the German colonies. And so anyway, we have many French-speaking brothers and sisters in Africa. They grow up speaking unless they're urban dwellers, and educated urban dwellers, because even in the cities, it's tribal languages in the homes. They grow up at first in their homes with their langue maternelle, their tribal language, but the French language is what unifies the countries, because then often you're having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 languages in a different country. So the newspapers, the radios, the schools, it's all in French. And then when you go to church, some places it's exclusively in French. Paroisse Wittenberg in Pointe-Noire is mostly in French, with the occasional announcement in Kituba. And but then other places, you will have the bilingual service, so a reading in French and then the reading repeated in Lingala, for example, or if you're in Togo, repeated in Moba. And some people were like, yeah, those Africans, they're just, they're so full of faith and fervor. They have these 2.5-hour services. Well, they are full of faith and fervor, but part of the reason church lasts longer there is because you're having to do a lot of things twice, including the sermon.
How has the pandemic affected your work there over the last year? I imagine travel has been close to impossible for most of that time. So what has been the impact of the last year or so on your work overseas?
Well, thank you, Sarah. The pandemic moved a lot of my work online last year, and there was a bit of what the missionaries call a year of grace, just the acknowledgement that there was going to be somewhat less work. I even was, the pandemic got in the way of doing my support raising with some of the travel restrictions in terms of traveling around and making presentations in the country. But the Lord opened up avenues. I looked for open red states that would let me come and make presentations in the summer. And I inaugurated some projects, including one we're going to talk about later, writing catechism songs in French, doing some collaborations with a couple of friends who are Africans who are helping me compose songs that will resonate among Africans. So French, the catechism in French with sturdy melodies and yet the kind of repetition and rhythm, and certainly following the patterns of Africanized French speech. So I'll talk about that more later. So, so a little bit of diversions, a little more into discussions of hymnal projects and selections of materials for that. But as far as the teaching, I was what my friends, the Schultes, who are deployed in Brazzaville on our Franco-African team, they called me the canary in the coal mine because I was the first to go back. I was ready to get back to the teaching because there's a lot of the nature of music is such. It's most effective if I'm in the same room and I'm working with a group of people and we're singing together. And so I wanted to get back as soon as possible, and I'm pleased to be back to my regular, heading out there about every 4 months and spending time 3 or 4 weeks at a time teaching. So I got to go back and went to Congo, which is where we have a really good beachhead. I can talk more about beachheads and mission strategy there. While my call is to a large region, the focus is on areas where we have concentrations of talent and interest, and where people can come and grow. So we have these flagships, one of which is Paroisse Wittenberg in Pointe-Noire, which I can also unpackage a little more. But anyway, I was able to teach in Brazzaville and also then hop on a bus. Do we dare tell fun COVID stories with our time here? I don't know, but I will say this as far as the impact. It was interesting to land in Africa. The journey there is certainly very COVID sensitive. In Paris, I was informed that my mask that I was wearing at the time, it isn't this one. It's actually this blue one made by the Proper Cloth people that has a little filter in. And I was told by the gracious hostess on the Air France flight that I could not wear that in the Paris airport. She had to give me a medical mask but she was so nice. She goes, but mine was plus chic. Mine was much, much cooler. Unfortunately, I couldn't wear that. So anyway, I get to Congo and it's the same thing in the airport. And then once you get out of the airport, a few people have them around their necks, and what you learn is that if there are the police or the military, they will stick the masks up in front of their mouths and nose, but otherwise it's pretty much ignored. So you have this bus. So I have this 10-hour bus ride from Brazzaville to Pointe-Noire, and we get on the bus and we're tootling along, and the porter who so you have a driver, but then you have like a porter who oversees and handles, checking tickets and all this kind of stuff, like an old-fashioned train. Kind of a cool thing too. Both journeys begins with a Christian prayer in the name of Jesus, and it's Paco, it's by the heart, he prays for all the people and their relatives and the driver and the safety, and au nom de Jésus Christ, and it's everybody says an amen, and things you don't encounter in the United States anymore, and so anyway, about an hour in, we're approaching one of the military checkpoints. They've had civil war in Republic of Congo back in 97. There's still some guerrilla activity in the Pool region, which we have to drive through to get to Pointe-Noire. And so there's about 7 military checkpoints along the way. And as we're approaching the checkpoint, so this is not a checkpoint for COVID at all. It's just the military. He gets up and he says very sternly, totally traditionally, "La porte des masques est obligatoire dans la République du Congo." The wearing of masks is obligatory in the Republic of Congo. And everybody puts their masks on. And we go past the checkpoint, and then I, And the soldier isn't really checking us for Mass, but he looks over the bus and he sees it's the Stella Mac bus. And then he kind of, with his rifle, he waves us on and we go. And then the same porter then dramatically, I wish we were on TV right now. I'll just have to do the gesture for Andy here. But anyway, he just, he then dramatically with a flourish takes his mask off and everybody else takes their mask off. And then 1 hour later, we go through the same routine.
Goodness. Tell us about the music.
Yes, that's why I'm here.
We got to hear a little bit of a piece that sounded very familiar. The tune sounded much like A Morning Star, fair and bright.
And that's exactly what it was. Au Christ Étoile du matin. Yes.
Very good. And we get to hear a little bit more in just a little bit. Tell us a little bit about this piece and teaching this while you were there.
Well, that is actually a piece that some of the people in the workshop who are pastors had learned at seminary. So we definitely want to thank my partners in this ongoing work. I've been teaching in Africa for 10 years, and the work was greatly aided and accelerated by Jacob Gaugert, who's on our Franco-African team, and Michael Wildauer, who taught at our seminary, or the seminary, Togo Church's seminary, in Dapong for many years. And so with that certainly, moved the ball forward. But what I did with this workshop is we had people from 3 or 4 parishes who were there, many of them who did not know this hymn. So I had the help of others in teaching. And what we focused on is learning the hymn by heart. In most situations in Africa, the vast, vast majority, 99%, the worshipers don't have hymnals. And I'm actually pushing this here in the United States. I have an article coming out in the Reformation edition of Logia magazine where I talk about this more at length. But suffice it to say, it is better to know 40 good hymns well than to be able to read and sing 400 hymns out of a book. I'm blessed to be at a congregation that's highly literate. I love the fact that at Village we sing anything out of the LSB and we can sing it well because of our level of literacy and music education. That's a great blessing. I'm advocating taking that away from people who are at that level. But at the same time, even for my fellow Missouri Synod Lutherans who are at that level here in the United States, I am a little concerned that someone at a congregational voters meeting can't say, let's sing Salvation Unto Us Has Come, and everybody can't sing even the first stanza because they're not looking at ink. And would that we be able to sing God Our Father Be Our Stay like we sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game or Happy Birthday. And I don't think it's too much to ask because think about how teenagers or most of ourselves when we're young could sing 100 pages worth of pop music. So what we worked on and didn't really take that long is we memorized the first and the fourth stanzas, which is a key theological stanza in the French hymnal. And so those who already knew it had some work to do because they learned it par cœur, by heart. The people got it down and then we added some percussion and then I made the recording. And so that's what I'm sharing.
Wonderful. We'll share a little bit of that here. You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
You're a miracle. You know that, right? A living, breathing, one-of-a-kind miracle. You were created to stand apart, to share your gifts in the service of others, to make an uncommon impact in a common world. And at Concordia University, it's our mission to help you do that, to live uncommon. To learn more about Concordia, go to cuw.edu.
Notre Père qui es aux cieux, que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton règne vienne, que ta volonté soit faite vrai pain de ce jour. Pardonnez-nous nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons aussi à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous soumets pas à la tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car c'est à toi qu'appartient le règne, la puissance et la gloire au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
So the piece we heard coming back,
Yes, it is a variation of the Lord's Prayer that is found in the French hymnal, but it was taken and adapted and changed and kind of made their own, which is what we call contextualization. Nobody can really copyright a formula tone for chanting because it'd be like copyrighting a chord progression. So if you can't copyright the blues, for example. Otherwise, there would be just this famously rich African-American family in Kansas City or something, So it's just a series of, So you have this formula, but what they did, and it's just so inspiring, is they embellished it, and then they added some dynamics and a little harmony, and I think it was the second Sunday that I was at Paroisse Wittenberg, and it was coming, and I was like, I got to pull out my phone and record this. And it's a good example. I wanted to share this because many people have heard African music and African singing and are inspired by the robust singing, the simple harmonies, and the rhythmic vitality with the percussion instruments. And so there's a bit of a stereotype that all African music is this way, but they also have ballads, folk ballads, by which telling stories, and also like this, just a cappella singing and chanting. So just wanted to give a fuller picture of what worship is like in an African parish.
Tell us more about the legacy of this music as you keep going back, teaching people in one location, and they go on to teach other people in other locations. Is there music that exemplifies this legacy that is now being passed on from people to people?
Yes, that is exactly what motivates me. Because I see things bearing fruit and seeing things happen. So at a more profound level than what we have with Étoile du matin or Morning Star, How Fair and Bright, was the next clip that we're going to play, Comment céleste, maître, which is the Gerhardt hymn, O Lord, how shall I meet thee?
Comment céleste maître chante. Comment céleste maître me faut-il t'accueillir, toi qui partout fais naître un saint et grand désir. Jésus que dans mon âme s'élève jour nouveau et que mon cœur s'enflamme pour toi comme un flambeau.
It's Lent, and I was a bit surprised that at Matins one morning, at the parish that I was at, they have Matins and Vespers every day. And at Matins, the preacher chose this hymn, and at first I was like, "Oh, Advent hymn." Oh, wait, but it worked with his message for the day. But I was like blown away by how well everybody sang it. And so after the service, before I started teaching, I asked, "Well, how do you know this hymn?" And Albert Kutia, who used to direct the seminary in Dapong, Togo, he looked at me and said, "You taught it to me in 2015." And I was like, "Well, how cool is this?" So you went home when you retired, and you taught it to your parish, and you taught it to Pastor Joseph, who taught it to this parish. And there are these other people from Christ-le-Roi who are here, and they knew it. I could tell everybody knew this hymn. So I did not have to teach this to you. And I was like, "Can we make a recording of this?" Oh yeah, sure. So they sang it. They sang two. So I asked for 2 stanzas, and they sang 2 stanzas again, for me in the recording. This is the kind of thing that just makes my day when I encounter these kind of moments. I had a similar one in Togo, where right before the pandemic, I was teaching in Togo, and at the workshop that I was at. I'm going up to breakfast this morning. It's like the first or second day that I was there. And this young man who's a seminarian, he goes, "Magnus!" And I'm like, look around, "Magnus!" And I'm like, "Do I know you?" And I didn't recognize him. Well, he had gone to my workshop in 2015, first time I was in the country. And no, second time. He went in 2017, that's right. And he was a youth leader at the time. And he learned the setting of the Gloria that I had adapted from the French hymnal. The one in the French hymnal had a key change and a couple of quirks that just weren't going to work without an organ, and it was a little too Western. And so I worked with a choir director at St. Augustin Parish in Brazzaville, and we have this Africanized, just a little more repetitious and a little more rhythmic and a little more chant-like a version of the Gloria, which works really well there. And I taught it to him. Well, he announced to me that they know 2 Glorias in his parish. And the pastor always announces whether they're going to sing the Gloria du Recueil, the one from the hymnal, or if they're going to sing le Gloria à la Magnesse. And so whenever the pastor announces they're going to sing the Gloria à la Magnesse, they sing the one that I put together. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. So I got to meet, his name is Jean-François, and I said, well, I'm going to be teaching it at this workshop, and you can help me teach this. So I made a recording of him singing it first for the class. Oral tradition, so strong. There was only one note that was changed in the entire setting. And I was just amazed and inspired. And so something like that, to be able to teach the glory to God in the highest through composed canticle, and then know that this person took it to heart so well that he taught it to his parish, and now it's used regularly at a small church in a village outside Dapong, Togo.
Share with us a little bit about, there's one more piece that we'd like to hear about, and this is particularly a great piece for teaching.
Yes.
Share with us about that, and we'll share just a little clip from it as well.
Wonderful. You were asked, Sarah asked a really good question earlier about how the work was affected by the pandemic. Certainly the idea of writing catechism songs in French was in the back of my mind, and there had been some discussion, but this really got accelerated when I'm looking at, well, what can I do when I can't make trips? And so Jad Ben Talansi, actually it's Benjamin. Jad Ben is, anyway, it's a nickname, I'll just say that. He speaks French very well, but it's obviously, it's an Africanized French. So I had him send me via WhatsApp recordings of him speaking the catechism and speaking. Well, we're just working on the commandments right now, but speaking the 10 commandments and their meanings, and doing it several times so I can listen, and then I muse on the rhythms of his speech, and then I listen when I go for walks or work out. When I'm getting ready to work on this project, listen to African music, including Afropop from Brazzaville and from Côte d'Ivoire, and just to kind of get my mind in that mind frame. And then, I try to create. Okay, and I realize, that I am creating something that is for a different culture. And whereas the hymns, it's texts and melodies, and they're more established, and they're more small C Catholic universal around the world, and they take them and they fashion their own accompaniments. To write songs is a bit of a harder cross-cultural task. So I try to collaborate. I'm trying to collaborate more closely. So this last trip, I went with just my First Commandment song, which I've finished and written out and practiced. And the problem with the First Commandment song for me is because it is very much thinking of Africans singing it. In my full arrangement, it was a little hard for me to sing and play at the same time. And of course, you want it to where you can just sing it anyway and just have some drums. But rhythmically, it's the conception is just a little bit outside for I can do it, but it takes a lot of effort. So anyway, the slang among the Kituba and Lingala for a white man is I'm a Mundele, okay? A Mundele or Mondele, depending whether you're Kituba or Lingala. And so I come in with some humility as a Mundele trying to write these songs for them. So I wanted to go ahead and try this out and see how they liked it. And much to my joy, Kuchia added this little introductory rhythm, and then we kind of layered things on, and then we added a repetition of a section. But the melody and the rhythmic concept was just perfect, and they loved it. And then Pastor Gustav wanted me to teach it to his people in Brazzaville upon my return. And so there's a recording you can have. This is the First Commandment and its meaning en français, according to the realities of African music, or like we say in French, selon les réalités de la musique africaine.
Le premier commandement, le premier commandement, le premier, il n'aura pas d'autre Dieu devant ma face, il n'aura pas d'autre Dieu devant ma face. Quelles sont ces paroles? Nous devons craindre et aimer Dieu, apprécier toutes ces choses, et mettre en lui seul notre entière confiance. Quelles sont ces paroles? Nous devons craindre et aimer Dieu, apprécier toutes ces choses, et mettre en lui seul notre entière confiance. Commandement, le premier commandement, le premier. Tu n'auras pas d'autre Dieu devant ma face. Tu n'auras pas d'autre Dieu devant ma face. Quelles sont ces paroles? Nous devons craindre et aimer Dieu, apprécier toutes les choses, et mettre en lui seul notre entière confiance. Quelles sont ces paroles? Nous devons craindre et aimer Dieu, apprécier toutes les choses, et mettre en lui seul notre entière confiance.
So you mentioned your newsletter. What are the ways that we can follow your work or stay in touch with what you're doing or support the work that you're doing in Africa?
The work that I am doing is there's a Facebook group, Philip Magnus in Africa, and also I work with Mission Central. So if you go to the Mission Central website and then go to Mission Central /Magnus, or just look up my name on their site, all my newsletters are there. So you can get them on Facebook, you can get them, or you can reach out to me at philip.magnus@lcms.org, and I'll put you on the mailing list, and you can get them directly via MailChimp.
That's Philip with 2 L's.
Yes, and Magnus with 2 S's.
Very good. We'll provide some links in the notes from today's program as well. Thanks so much for being our guest in the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
Nous devons craindre et aimer Dieu, apprécier toutes les choses, et et toutes choses, et mettre en ciel notre entière confiance.
Ça va deux fois, hein? Très bien.